while all of them have spotlight panels, I call it Q&A with so-and-so, I took the time to at least dispel the rumors about what happened. Talk about some really important things that I learned along the way. This is not going to be like South Park. It's not going to be all about what I learned today, because it was actually what I learned last year. Are there any South Park fans in the room?
Was.
Thank you. Oh, I haven't seen this week's episode, but the Jersey Shore episode almost killed me. It's just I don't think I have ever laughed that hard watching South Park. The Snooki. Oh my gosh. And the funny thing is, they don't even realize, I mean, like, they were proud of that. Like, Snooki wrote on her blog, somebody said, just saw South Park, OMG WTF, but looks like we've made it. Like, I guess she thinks that's a compliment, that she's a giant butter monster that jumps on everything and wants to make smush mush. That's so funny. Oh my god, that was funny. Anyway, so I won't pull a Kyle. I won't, at the very end of this panel, talk about what I learned. But there's some serious things I talk about, but I also give you guys the chance to just ask anything. I have the weirdest situation when I go to cons now, because there are some people that don't even know I'm a voice actor. Some people think I'm that rave guy, because I'm always DJing at all the raves, and they think that they're like, hey, DJ guy, and I'm like, yeah, I'd rather be called DJ guy some days. I work on staff of now 3 conventions. One of them is next weekend. I have people that, because they follow me on Facebook, want to ask me about my prairie dog, and about, like, there's a rumor. I just recently moved to an island, and I guess a bunch of people think I live on a deserted island, because they're like, man, you're really getting away from it all, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. What do you mean? And they're like, I'm not playing my cards right. I need to take a lesson from Paris Hilton. I mean, what? But I tightened it. Maybe that's the key. Hopefully. No. It's a little bit better. But anyway, wow, the limp microphone just got me. Somebody said, well, I heard you bought an island. I'm like, you've obviously mistaken me for somebody that makes a lot of money. And they're like, well, I mean, why'd you move to an island? I mean, what do you do for the internet? I'm like, dude, we have an airport on the island I live on, and electricity and cars and everything else. So this panel is for a little bit of everything. If I talked about only serious stuff in this panel, especially I just did the bootlegging panel, so like, yeah, let's get heavy twice in a row. So I'll start with, who has any questions? If it's voice actor questions, I'll take those. If it's just anime industry questions, I'll take those. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your, out of all the roles you have done, which one is your absolute positive favorite?
You can't ever get an actor to pick a favorite, except maybe Steve Bloom. Steve Bloom has the coolest tattoo in the world now. I just did a convention 2 weeks ago with him, and he has this weird tattoo that looks like this. It looks like almost like a V pattern, and the closer I got to it, it was a wave file. Like, it's definitely a sound file.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? This is so nerdy and so cool. It's Spike's last line in Cowboy Bebop. I was like, dude, you get cool tattoo of the year award. I was like, that's the coolest tattoo ever. Very few of us will ever pick one character.
Okay.
I will usually narrow it down to 3, and the weird thing is they're all leads, and I hate saying that because the lead is not always the best character. But I absolutely love Koyuki and Beck because he's to me in my mind he's like a real person. That's what I like about Beck. There are no magical swords. There's no flying cars. The only thing not believable about that show is that dog. That's it. And in the movie, I think the dog is just a normal-looking dog, which is kind of cool, because it would have been hard to pull off that Frankenweenie look for a dog in a real-life movie. Koyuki, and also because I have a friend that's just like him, and he was, hello. Oh, you've got the magic tool. Yeah. Is it hose? Is it poop hard? I got it a little bit tighter, just kind of screwing this around. Awesome, wait. Here. Awesome, thank you. Yay. Oh yeah, this is much tighter. Thank you. It's so weird that you want the tightest mic stand. You don't want it doing that? Awesome.
That one just doesn't hide up.
Yeah, that one's just... Oh, there's another joke. I can't go there. Much like Amy Winehouse, that one has just seen too much action. There, it was a drinking reference and not the Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton reference I was about to make. Oh, I just did. Anyway. Your listener. There you go, yeah. Okay, wow. Talking about getting railroaded, I totally lost train of thought. The other two. I didn't finish. I have a friend, a very good friend who was very young at the time, and I generally don't make friends with kids. And it sounds so horrible, but watching what the American public did to Michael Jackson, even after 2 weeks after his death, that kid came forward and said his father told him to say all these horrible things about Michael Jackson. So. And really everything after that can just all be cracked up to lies too. So as a rule, anytime you're around a bunch of kids, like I've just made a rule, I'm not friend. If you can't vote, I can't be your buddy. Like I can't be your close friend. You don't have to actually vote. I have friends that don't do that either. But I don't befriend a lot of kids. But once in a blue moon, I meet a kid at a convention that's just a really nice person. I had met this kid at a convention in Chicago that was probably one of the worst conventions I've ever been to in my life. And what was so awesome, he was with his grandma, and he was like, "This is the best convention ever!" He just kept saying that over and over, and we were all miserable. We were like, "Oh yeah, this is the best, all right, kid. This is crap. If this is crap, it's number one. Take number one in crappy." Well, we weren't friends, but I kept seeing him, and the one thing I noticed one year is his hair was like long and dirty and like black and streaked white. And I was like, uh-oh, this kid just got bit by the rock and roll bug. And because I friend most people that friend me on, and before anybody gets excited about Facebook, I'm finally on Facebook. I'll talk about that in a minute too. But he friended me on MySpace. That's how long ago this was. MySpace was actually not crap then. So I could see what he was up to, but we weren't buds. We didn't talk on the phone. The coolest thing, his profile said at one point, it said, "My name is," I guess I can say his name, because, yeah, I can say his name. It's like, "My name is Sam Biggs. I love anime and my grandma," which is awesome, because his grandma, we call her Grandame. She is forever taking this group of boys to conventions. And here's this sweet old lady in the room with 4 smelly boys, like, and she's just okay with it all. She's having a good time. But he went on to say, he goes, "More than anything, I love rock." And he said, I don't have a lot of natural talent, but I practice every GD day. And one day I'll be better than those people that take talent for granted. And it's funny because I knew a kid like Koyuki before I ever saw or heard anything about Beck. So when I started working on the show, I violated the rule about being friends with kids. One, because I know his grandmother, so she knows I'm not a creeper or anything like that. So I felt pretty secure in that, and I got to know this kid more as a real person. So when I watch Beck, that character is more flushed out than a lot of my other characters because it's kind of based on a real person to me. Like, I know someone just like that kid. The cool thing is a bunch of... you think I don't ever use a mic. I could do this that we do in the booth, but how ridiculous. Everybody would be like, "Is he a Naruto fan? What is that?" Like, all the pictures, Greg Ayres has got his fingers up. Yeah, we do that because, it's not that great with this one, but it cuts down a little bit on the wind. The cool thing is a bunch of voice actors got together with some other people, and we did this charity project called Voices for Peace. And we recorded some albums, and the money went to charity. But the coolest thing is we do, or have done, I think the last one is at SegoyCon, which I won't be at, but we used to do concerts at conventions, and people would come to. The coolest thing is, recently, in the last 2 years, anytime we're somewhere where Sam is close by, Sam comes on stage and plays Slip Out, and we do Slip Out, and he plays a guitar, which is a really big deal to me, because this kid's not a kid anymore. Like, I've known him since he was 12, but he's almost 20 now. And to see this kid rocking out on stage, and he has all the confidence in the world, and he really was that kid once upon a time. So Koyuki will always mean more to me than a lot of characters because, and the kid worships Beck. I told him, I was like, hey, there's a show coming out I think you're going to like. And he's like, I bet you're working on it, aren't you? I was like, I can't say anything, but there's a show I know you're going to like. And then the next year at Anime Central, I gave him a copy of the Beck manga. I was like, hey, man, you should read this. And he's like, oh, yeah? And I was like, yeah, you should read this. So he's super, super into the manga. In fact, he got in trouble because he went and read the scanlations for the rest of the show. And I'm like, dude, how could you do that? Like, how could you do that to me? But the other would be Chrono, because...
Chrono Crusade.
Chrono Crusade, yeah. And I hate, because again, lead role, but I got to meet the creator of Chrono Crusade before we finished recording it at Anime Boston in 2005, and meeting Moriyama changed my perception of Japanese guests, because up until that point I had not met a polite or nice Japanese guest, which as an anime fan you can imagine how much that hurts.
Oh.
Like, I met a person, and I won't say their name because they're a really big deal, but I hope American fans never meet this person, because I love anime, and I love that, you know, anime brings kids to Japanese culture. And the funny thing is, I was having a conversation with Moriyama about this through a translator. Luckily, Anime Boston has a phenomenal interpreter team. And I said, you know, I am so grateful that I met you, because up until now, I've never had a good experience with a Japanese creator of a show. I said, and as a fan, that's very disheartening. And he asked who I had met, and so I had named off some people. And in all cases, they were involved in the production of the show. Well, he's a mangaka, so he's the original storyteller. And he kind of smiled, and he looked at the interpreter, and he said something, and the interpreter said, well, that's the difference between production and creation. I was like, touche. Like, it was great. And he's a really awesome person, and his manager is this little J-Rock looking guy named Kato-san. They took him to buy jeans at Hot Topic, and the size 1 women's jeans were baggy on him. And like, he is 5'1", but with his hair, he's 5'3". So like, he's got big J-Rock hair, and they're just really nice people. And talking to him and learning more about the show than I would ever know otherwise changed how I felt about the show. Knowing that he indeed wrote the second ending of the show, that the ending in the anime is different from the ending in the manga for a reason. He answered some questions that I had about the character and about certain things that happened in the show, and it was just, it would forever change how I feel about the show. It's such a great story, and he fought very hard to tell that story. His original publisher would not produce it. They said, no one will be interested in this. It's religious, which no one has an interest in. It takes place in America, which Japanese people, don't care about. And it's too complicated a story. And this is what I love him for. He's like, okay, I will start working on something else, and continue to work on Chrono Crusade. And he took it, he started shopping it around to other people, other publishers. And the publishers basically said, look, fine, we'll produce this, and you'll see we're right and you're wrong. No one will ever buy this. And it was a huge hit, and then Gonzo Studios turned it into an animation. So it.
Oh, Gonzo?
Yeah, Gonzo did the animation on Chrono Crusade. So it's a very good lesson for us to see that an artist is ultimately the dictator of their work, and not the people that publish their work. So it's really neat. And then the other would be Son Goku and Sayuki, and for very selfish reasons, because I was a big fan of the show. And and that's my favorite character in the show too. I don't know, I guess some people probably wouldn't like him because he's spastic and hyper like me, but I identify with that character. I am that guy. I'm always ready to eat, I'm always ready to get in the middle of trouble, and he's a super loyal friend, which is something that's a big deal to me too. So, and the idea that something that you used to be a fan of and used to watch, and then suddenly you're that person, is really super hard to even imagine what that feels like. That's like being a huge fan of the Rolling Stones and like getting a call from Mick Jagger going, look, Keith's finally not with us anymore. You wanna come play with us? Like, that's what it feels like. Like, because Keith Richards is an animal.